Well, I want to thank you for taking my class, Learning the FOSS4g Stack Spatial SQL with Postgres. It's also been known as Spatial is not special, and Spatial SQL as a language for geographers. And the reason I say that is oftentimes geographers might feel a little bit skittish about getting into real programming languages. But SQL is very English-like, it's very easy to use, so it's a great way to leverage geographic information and perform complex geographic analysis. Now, this course is part of an entire curriculum on learning the FOSS4g stack. So I have other courses in QGIS and Python, as well as a strict Postgres class. This class is going to focus on the SQL language, and in particular, using spatial constructs within that language. The course is actually broken up into 6 different parts. So the first thing we're going to do is load our software and the data, just getting it into the database itself. Then I'm going to provide a brief overview of SQL, why it's important, how it is used. So we'll give some quick examples of that, especially for those of you who aren't quite as familiar with SQL. The next thing we're going to start to look more deeply into the different kinds of SQL data types. This is very different than what you might have seen in GIS. There's a lot more data types that are available to us. And in particular, we're interested in the geometry data type. So we're going to really start to look at geometry not as this special GIS thing, but really as just another kind of data type that we can work with, so that the way we perform analysis now becomes very consistent across all different data types, and spatial just being one of those. We're then going to dive into just traditional SQL. SQL is a huge language, and it does so much, and it's doing so much in the world today in terms of running databases for hospitals, for things like online reservation systems, banks, and also GIS. So I want to get into the traditional aspects of SQL and all the really cool things that we can do. But then in part 5, we're going to transition into the spatial part of SQL for vector geometry. So we're going to look at how we perform GIS type operations with spatial SQL and how that's tied into traditional SQL. So with these two tied in together, we can really leverage the power of SQL to perform true geographic analysis. And that's where part 6 will lead to. We're going to look at some classic geographic analysis models. So this is beyond doing something like a buffer. We're going to actually look at true models and replicate them in SQL. The reason I want to do that is to show you how you can take formulas that are part of a classic model and then reimagine them within an SQL context. So at the end of this course, you should understand what SQL is. You're going to learn about it. You'll be very conversant with it. You'll also learn how to query databases using SQL. And that's not even just talking about the spatial stuff. This is just traditional databases. And you're going to see how that is so very different than what you may have used with a GIS wizard to perform a query. But then you're also going to learn how to leverage spatial constructs using spatial SQL. So same kind of SQL language, but just with spatial functionality. And then by looking at those geographic models, you're going to see how we develop GIS-based applications with SQL on the back end. For most of my students who go through a course like this, typically at the end, they don't even want to open up a GIS GUI any longer. They just really want to type SQL. So you're going to find that even through a course like this, you're going to learn enough SQL where you're going to be comfortable answering questions, and you're going to say, wow, why didn't I learn this before? And you're also going to see the real power in SQL. So I hope you're all ready to work alongside me. We're going to be working together, looking at a lot of different examples and talking through them.